Welcome one and all. Step right up and get your tickets for another moment in gaming history.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome officially to the channel. This is a series where I go into various different moments in video game history, and today I want to talk about a kind of phenomenon that happened in video games, specifically the arcade scene, early in its inception. This is something that radically changed games, and was even responsible for a few new games, and that's mod kits. So sit back and hang out a while I tell you about a small group of MIT students who took the arcade scene by storm. The year was 1977. Doug McRae and Kevin Kern were spending a fair amount of their time after classes in the local arcade, blowing off some steam and losing a fair amount of money. Not to video games, but pinball machines. You see, pinball machines were all the rage, and they had become more and more interested in it as a hobby until one day, McRae actually managed to inherit a pinball machine from his older brother. Knowing how much money he had spent, and being a bit of an entrepreneur at heart, he decided to set up his pinball machine on campus to see if he could earn a little money on the side. It turned out to be way more popular than he thought, and as a result, he asked Curran to join him as a business partner. The two expanded the business to around 20 pinball machines and arcade cabinets. Before long, the two practically owned the arcade at MIT. A few years later, a new game would hit the scene that would pique their interest: Missile Command. Missile Command was designed by Atari and released in 1980. It became an instant arcade hit for its addictive gameplay, which consisted of moving a crosshair across the screen using a trackball and pressing one of the 3 buttons on the console to launch a counter missile from the appropriate battery. These would explode at the location of the crosshair and persist for a few seconds. The objective was to protect your cities from incoming fire. The game would eventually end when all the cities were destroyed. Like most games at the time, the longer it was out, the more people got good at it and were able to go further on a single credit, or in many cases, just losing interest entirely. However, being MIT students, the two began to reverse engineer the cabinets that they bought, eventually coming up with what could be called an enhancement kit. They called this Super Missile Attack. This had a few key differences from the original game. 1. The game got new colors and a different attract mode, which is effectively a preview or splash screen meant in the arcade to lure players in. As far as gameplay goes, it had more missiles, faster missiles. Clouds from explosions got smaller as the game went by to make it more challenging. It also added an entirely new object in a UFO that moved faster and more randomly. This wouldn't be the only time the kids from MIT would make an important game out of mods. The group, now known as General Computing Corporation, or GCC for short, was on a roll and decided to make another modification, or enhancement board if you will, for one of the most popular games at the time, PacMan. This enhancement was known as Crazy Otto, which sounds like something more along the lines of Berserk than anything else. However, by this time, Atari had actually gotten wind of what the company was doing, and they were, let's just say, less than thrilled, deciding to sue them, only to eventually drop the lawsuit and hire them instead. They did this ultimately to get them to stop making enhancement boards for their games and to make games for them. This left GCC in a bit of a bind. You see, they had a lot of money invested in this board, so instead of just installing it, they marketed it to Bally Midway, which you may know better as Midway, who was the main American distributor for PacMan at this time. Midway was getting increasingly frustrated, waiting for Namco to make a sequel for the very popular game. So it was that Midway showed the offering to the head of Namco, Masaya Nakamura, who agreed and fully licensed and approved the game. That's right, for those of you who didn't already know, Ms. Pac-Man was a mod before being relabeled as an entirely new release. This is honestly how many games were made in the earlier days, with mod boards being added into existing cabinets, in most cases intended to make the games harder so that operators would continue to maintain high revenue and extend the life of the arcade cabinets. However, what do you guys think of this one? How many of you knew about the arcade modding scene in the early days of the arcades? Did any of you mess with any of these games, and which are your favorites? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, give this video a like. And if you haven't, consider subscribing. It really does help me out a lot. Until we meet again though, have a great rest of your day, and happy gaming.